The Clippers will go into tonight's home game against New Orleans with the best record in the Western Conference. At 34-15, the Clippers are a half game ahead of Oklahoma City, Minnesota, and Denver. OKC and Minnesota lost last night to move the Clippers into the top spot in the West. The Clippers are coming off a 6-1 road trip. They are 15-3 since January 1st and 19 games over 500 for the first time since April 11, 2021. Tip-off time tonight is 7 p.m. on ESPN. The Lakers are off until Thursday night against Denver at Crypto.com. Top 5 women's college basketball teams in this week's AP poll: South Carolina, Iowa, North Carolina State, Colorado, and Ohio State. UCLA is 9th, USC 10th. Top 5 men's teams: UConn, Purdue, North Carolina, Kansas, and Houston. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
Climate is king.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we believe that caring for the community means caring about the climate. You might have heard that we announced a pretty bold 12-month, $2 million campaign to do 4 things. Increase climate literacy, turn up the volume on communities of color in the climate conversation, connect everyday people with the resources they need to survive and thrive, and highlight frontline climate justice crusaders of color throughout this year. KBLA Talk 1580 will be bringing you insightful interviews on all of our shows to help raise your climate IQ. Each quarter this year, we will also be hosting free climate events in various communities throughout the city with food, fun, and forward-thinking conversations. Thanks to partners like LADWP, Metro, Caltrans, the Sierra Club, the California Community Foundation, the California Endowment, AQMD, MWD, and more. You'll also be hearing more about a couple of national town halls broadcasting live from Los Angeles, to which you will be invited. And we'll be rolling out a robust social media campaign on all our platforms, as well as an outdoor media campaign, all designed to educate, enlighten, and empower you in our fight for climate justice.
We want cleaner air.
Caring about the community means caring about the climate. At KBLA Talk 1580, we believe that we really can change the world if we care enough. 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 If we care enough.
1, 2, 3, go! Ha ha! I'm gonna try to keep it coming. Things ain't always smooth, oh wait. But I'll be alright as long as I can find the groove. Yes, I will, yeah. Somehow I know that I can make it. You seem to like my style. Now, don't you worry, I'm gonna be around a while. Yes, I will. I'm just happy to see you talk to me back in style again.
Live from historic Leimert Park in Los Angeles, California, I'm Tavis Smiley, and I'm so glad to see you and me back in stride again. Before we get started with today's show, let me invite you to follow me on Facebook and Instagram at The Real Tavis Smiley and get updates on X, that's formerly Twitter, at Tavis Smiley. By the way, should you miss any part of today's program or want to catch up on previous shows, you can always visit thetavissmileyshow.com. That's thetavissmileyshow.com, or wherever you get your podcast, and listen to the Tavis Smiley podcast of this program at your leisure. Another great show on tap you today. In our second hour, we'll talk SCOTUS with Georgetown University law professor Cliff Sloan. He has a new book out which takes a historic look at the High Court called The Court at War, which seems apt right about now. The Court at War, as you no doubt already know, the court will hear oral arguments tomorrow about whether states like Colorado, Maine, and others can keep Donald Trump off the ballot this year. And, of course, after yesterday's appellate court ruling that Donald Trump does not have immunity from prosecution for his role in the January 6th insurrection, the court may as well take up that case on a Trump appeal. So, a timely conversation with Georgetown law professor Cliff Sloan today in hour 2. In our third hour, actor, producer and activist Danny Glover joins us to discuss this year's Pan-African Film and Arts Festival, which he co-founded back in 1992. The festival has remained dedicated to the promotion of black stories and images through film, visual art, and other creative expressions. Danny Glover joins us live today in Hour 3. But in this first hour today, in 1995, Craig Newmark's email list to friends turned into, wait for it, Craigslist.org, which revolutionized the way we use the internet. I think it's fair to say that Craigslist.org has done pretty well since 1995, and now Craig Newmark is using his money to help revolutionize the world of philanthropy. I am pleased to welcome to this program Craig Newmark. Craig, how are you today, sir?
Hey, I'm doing well. Really glad to be here.
It's good to have you on the program. Thanks for the time and a lot to talk about. We'll do politics, as I said, in the second hour, and art in our third hour. We start on a business tip here, business and philanthropy, as I mentioned a moment ago. So take me back. We got time. We got an hour here. Take me back a few minutes to how Craigslist came to be in the first place.
Well, back in the early 95, I reflect that I really am a nerd. Classic 1950s nerd. No social skills, and my personal branding is all about being socially awkward. Mm-hmm. But even back then, people were helping me out on the internet, giving me a lot of help, like places to eat, where to get food. So I figured I should give back. I started a simple mailing list, mostly focusing on arts and technology events. I listened to people, I committed, and I followed through, and I just kept keeping on.
Mm. When you say mostly arts and tech events, why art and tech events?
That was the beginning of the dot-com bubble, and we were starting to hear from lots of startups doing cool stuff. I was also hearing from people who were doing stuff using the new technology for the arts, like storytelling, or even fundraising for a small theater group. So I heard about the stuff, I shared it, and people sent me more to share.
Mm-hmm. And initially, the purpose of your sharing was what?
Well, in part, it was me giving back to the community who had given me so much. Mm-hmm. And also, it did give me a greater sense of personal connection, because I needed to find something to better connect people, because seriously, I was and I remain a nerd.
When you first started sending this arts and tech events list, as you said initially, to your friends, I'm just curious, how big was that list in the first place, or how small was it, depending on how one looks at it?
I started with around 10 to 12 people, but it started growing word of mouth relatively quickly. Mm-hmm.
I'm just laughing that Craig's list became what it became, and it started with just 10 to 12 people. Just getting started, speaking of getting started in this hour with this conversation with Craig Newmark, the founder of Craigslist.org. He's doing some pretty amazing work in the world of philanthropy. We'll get to that, of course, later in this hour. But more of the backstory about Craig's List when we come forward with Craig Newmark on Tavis Smiley.
Interrogating and unpacking. That's what we do around here. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
What is dedication?
My biggest fear in the middle of my addiction was that my kids wouldn't have a father. And I started thinking, you know what? This isn't my story. I definitely had to become a better man to be a better father. It's important to me that my kids are empowered and truly believe that if they can think it, they can do it.
That's dedication. Visit fatherhood.gov to hear more. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Joey from Vermont, a farmer trying to get through the winter. Adriana from South Carolina, a single mother living paycheck to paycheck. Liam from Ohio, an injured father struggling to provide for his family. Hi, I'm Shanola Hampton, and I support the Feeding America network of food banks because they help provide over 6 billion meals to people in need each year. Learn more at feedingamerica.org.
Listen up, City of Los Angeles renters that live in rent-controlled units. Landlords can now increase your rent by 4%. Know these 3 facts. The rent increase is allowed February 1st, 2024 through June 30th, 2024. An extra 1% per utility up to 6% can be added if the landlord pays the entire gas and electric bill. And illegal rent increase complaints can be filed at housing.lacity.org. Check if you live in a rent-controlled unit and learn more at housing.lacity.org. Be informed, be protected, be at home.
You can do it all by yourself, baby girl. What's your name? Let me talk to you. Let me buy you a drink.
Spilled your drink? Quick, the quicker picker-upper. Bounty picks up spills quicker. And each sheet is 2 times more absorbent, so you can use less than the leading ordinary brand. So you can get back to your night. Bounty, the quicker picker-upper.
KBLA Talk 1580 is the exclusive media sponsor of this light of ours, activist photographers of the Civil Rights Movement. A dynamic new exhibition on view now at the Skirball Cultural Center in Los Angeles. This light of ours showcases more than 150 photos taken by movement insiders from diverse backgrounds that reveal the vital work undertaken by a broad coalition of organizers and everyday people whose collective action changed America. This light of ours is one of 3 temporary exhibitions currently on view at the Skirball, which together explore issues related to civil rights, immigration, and pluralism. Tickets and more information for all 3 exhibitions are available at skirball.org. That's skirball.org. SKIRBALL.org.
Smart talk for curious people just like you. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley and Craig Newmark, who is the founder of CraigsList.org, doing some pretty amazing work in the world of philanthropy, which we'll talk about later again in this conversation. But I'm always fascinated by the backstories of these tech innovators who end up bringing us ideas and platforms that really do change the way we use the internet. And one clearly has to acknowledge that CraigsList.org did just that. Craig Newmark, when you first sent that list out to those 10 or 12 people, and that list started growing and growing, in part, as you said, because people started sending stuff to you, what did you learn then about the way that human beings, I'm trying to frame this the right way and phrase it the right way, the way we really do look to others to help us navigate the world that we live in?
Back then, and even more since then, I learned that people are overwhelmingly good, but there's always a small number of bad actors who seek profit or attention, sometimes by doing things to hurt people. So you got to encourage the good and watch out for the bad.
What did you notice early on about the way that your list was being used that helped you grow it to become the Craigslist that we know it to be?
Well, back then was a unique time. This is like 95, 96. People had a tremendous urge to connect through the net. And, well, all I was doing was classified ads. But back then, that was a kind of social networking. I don't know if Craigslist is used for that purpose these days. I'm retired. But the deal is that you do want to help people out. You do want to treat people like you want to be treated.
Over the years, what have you learned, in fact, about social networking, the way it's changed from then until now?
Well, it's hard to do, but you got to look out for your people. You got to do some content moderation to help stop people from getting hurt. You got to do what you can. Some things we don't know how to do, but you still have to act in good faith.
Yeah. What are your thoughts these days? And you've been at it for a long time. As you said, you're now retired from this. But what do you make of the way in which the internet is so out of control? And to your point earlier about the ways in which we need to do better at not allowing this invention to be used to hurt people. And we could have hours of conversation just about that. But what I'm driving toward is the responsibility of these content creators to better police this innovation, to keep folk from being duped and hurt and taken advantage of.
Well, this is a pretty broad area.
Mm-hmm.
The big guys have or should have what they call trust and safety teams. Some of the big platforms have them, but sometimes their management doesn't listen about what the right thing to do is. So what I do in the background is very quietly encourage and try to help the trust and safety people with limited success.
Mm-hmm.
My problem is that I know how to do a little leadership by example, but I don't know how to be a big voice to help trust and safety people everywhere. I feel that I'm tragically lacking what the kids call riz, although what people our age call charisma. I don't have any. I need it to get the job done.
Mm-hmm. So looking back on Craigslist over the years, what in fact do you think made it so successful?
Well, Craigslist helps you get through the day. Craigslist helps you put food on the table, and the site does so in a way that's pretty easy to pick up. You look at Craigslist, what to do is as easy as you can make it on the internet. And what Craigslist did is onboarded maybe hundreds of millions of Americans onto the net, showing people that the internet is actually useful and you can get stuff done without a lot of pain.
Mm-hmm. When you say that, I mean, you bragged earlier, and I loved it, about proudly being a nerd, and that you sort of lack in certain social skills, and yet your brilliance is there for all to see, and the way that you came up with this idea that we all have embraced, and again changed the way we use the internet. Talk to me about your social skills and why you think they are lacking, and that reality didn't stop you, again, from doing something so creative, so innovative that's been embraced around the world, social skills or not.
Well, first, I have no brilliance. I have a persistence, and I commit to some things like what I learned in Sunday school. Seriously, treat people like you want to be treated. Know when enough is enough.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you really do need to be your sister's keeper and your brother's keeper.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I know about. That's what I just kept doing, or trying to. I do know that in business, particularly when I was at IBM, I could be a real jerk. When someone got something technically wrong, I would correct them, sometimes in front of people, and that was really stupid, but that's what I was about. It was only when I was doing Craigslist customer service in a really big way that I wear away my own rough edges.
Mm-hmm.
But even now, I can only fake social skills, and I can only fake them for 90 minutes at most, after which point I get cranky.
Mm-hmm. I wonder whether or not you think, in fact, the internet. I mean, you were there early on to help innovate this platform. I'm wondering whether or not you think, to your point now, the internet challenges people growing and expanding their social skills. I mean, it's a. You see where I'm going with this? It is a device. It's an instrument that we spend all of our time on solo, and I'm not sure that this platform that you took quite nice advantage of helps us in building our social skills.
Yeah, I'd say the internet amplifies a person's individual tendencies for good and for bad. It encourages our better angels for people who are well motivated.
Mm-hmm.
But if a person, let's say, has issues, if they don't like people, then they can find other people who have bad tendencies. And then people who want to hurt other people they can find other people to encourage them to do that, they can make a lot of noise, which means they're much more effective hurting people. We're seeing that play out in politics these days.
Mm-hmm. In what ways, you think?
Well, in certain circles, racism and anti-Semitism are encouraged. People are told that racism and anti-Semitism are okay. Mm-hmm. You can find people who will tell you that, and people who, like me, who say, "Hey, that's not okay." Sometimes we don't know how to do it well. I look for people who are smarter than me, who can deliver a message more effectively, to repeat messages like, "Hey, accentuate the positive and de-amplify the negative."
Mm-hmm. When you said earlier, I'm pivoting here because I want to make sure I don't lose sight of this. When you said earlier in this conversation that you have learned over the years that there are times when enough is enough. I want to probe that because, as you well know, we live in a world of excess. We live in a world of consumerism. And I wonder what you meant by that, and if you might unpack that phrase in terms of your life experience, that enough is enough sometimes.
This is like one of those Sunday school messages that I got way back like around 1960. And the idea is that once you have enough to live comfortably, you can help your family out or something. I don't see a point in hoarding stuff or money that you don't need. And in my case, I've been very lucky. I've done well financially. And there's two approaches in our country, in our culture. You can just take that money, try to make more of it, sometimes getting in the way of other people doing well. The usual metaphor is that other people offered me a ladder to do better and to get into the middle class or to do better. So I figure it's better for me to make more ladders, to help more people do well. And that, in a sense, that's the gist of what I'm trying to do for the City University of New York.
Mm-hmm. Great segue. Tell me about the City University of New York and what you are doing there. In fact, I mentioned earlier your philanthropy, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on. Tell me about it.
Well, in general, what City University has done for New Yorkers almost 200 years is it helps people who are growing up with no money, helps people like that, including me, to get into the middle class or do even better by giving them good training and good jobs. And that's what our country is supposed to be about, helping other people out, giving people a break. And so I'm only trying to practice what I'm preaching. I'm only putting my money where my mouth is.
Mm-hmm. And what exactly are you doing with that money?
Well, the big thing at CUNY is that I've contributed $10 million to kick off an effort to make the journalism school tuition free. The deal is that they give a great journalism education there. Through CUNY journalism, we hear from people who we'd never hear from. I mean, literally, in my case, I've been there. I've heard from people that normally I would never hear from. Sometimes I hear things I don't really want to hear, like how bad it can be for some folks. But that's what CUNY is about. That's what New York is about. And that's what our country is supposed to be about. It should be fair to everyone. I'm repeating myself, but treat people like you want to be treated.
Yeah. Why does and this is worth asking, I think, why, of all the things that you could put your money behind, what is it about the state of our journalism in this country that made you want to put your money there to give journalism students free tuition? Why journalism?
Okay. Well, in high school history, I did have a really good teacher, and among other things, he taught us that a trustworthy press is the immune system of democracy. We need trustworthy, well-trained journalists speaking truth to power. We need that to protect us. It's kind of a national security thing. And we need that more than ever this year in this country.
How concerned are you to your point about this year in this country, that the news media is going to cover this campaign in the way that it ought to be covered. I ask that against the backdrop of my comments time and time again on this program that I think the mainstream media has done not so good a job at covering one Donald Trump. And you can go back to, a couple campaigns ago. And I just think they've sort of, well, let's be frank, they created this guy. They gave him all this free press. They gave him all these opportunities. There were others who were begging for chances to be heard and to be seen, and they just fawned over this guy. So my read is that in many ways we, the mainstream media, that is, created Donald Trump. Now everybody hates this guy. Well, not everybody. 70+ million Americans probably still will vote for him this time around, so not everybody. But I'm just trying to get your assessment of the way you think the mainstream media, the corporate media, is operating in real time.
Well, forgetting about individuals, there's well-known journalistic ethics about, well, you don't want to amplify a lie, no matter where the lie is coming from. You don't want to make something seem equivalent that are not equivalent. For example, mishandling email is not the same thing as the deliberately taking national security secrets. That's what the ethical people call false equivalence. That, again, if somebody, lies normally, you want to be really careful before you quote them, maybe amplifying a lie. There's a lot of things like that which are basics, which CUNY journalism is good about, the Columbia School of Journalism is good about, the NYU journalism people are good at. So again, I'm trying to encourage the good and discourage the bad. I'm in over my head with this. I'm in over my head regarding philanthropy in general because I'm an amateur at philanthropy. I honestly don't know what I'm doing, but I know that. So instead, I built a network of people who do know journalism, who know help for military families and vets. I built a network of people who know cybersecurity, and I get their help. What's more is that I just don't stop. And, part of what CUNY Journalism just announced is a relationship with Microsoft and others to find good ethical ways of using AI in the classroom.
Yeah. Now, AI is going to change the game, no question about that. And so I'm glad that they are wrestling with how, in fact, it can be used in ways to aid and abet good journalism as opposed to advancing falsehoods and stories that are not rooted in truth at all. His name is Craig Newmark. He's the founder of Craigslist.org, and he's one of those Americans who's using his wealth, using his money for some good philanthropically. Just gave $10 million to CUNY Journalism, and they're doing some pretty amazing work there. So we thank Craig Newmark for his work and for his witness. Thank him for Craigslist, which, again, revolutionized the way we do the Internet, and we are grateful that there are any number of journalism students who'll be benefited in the years to come because of his contributions to CUNY. We thank Craig Newmark for joining us on this program today. When we come forward, more of Tavis Smiley.
For all the freedom-loving folk, this is Tavis Smiley.
I feel like freedom.
If you're like me, 60 and retired, making ends meet, especially here at the supermarket and drugstore, is tough. I'm so blessed to have found benefitscheckup.org. It's a free and confidential website from the National Council on Aging that connected me to $1,200 a year in programs that help pay for food, medicine, utilities, and more. Maybe it can help you. benefitscheckup.org.
My daughter was diagnosed with a rare malignant rhabdoid tumor on the spine. They sent her straight to St. Jude. My hope was gone. But when you get there, everyone's like, hey, we're not going to give up. And when you see other people not giving up on your child, that makes all the difference in the world. When I found out I didn't have to pay, I was just grateful. They saved my baby's life.
Finding cures, saving children. Learn more at stjude.org.
I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. Pro-life activists in Oklahoma want to put some more penalties into the state's abortion ban. There is support for a bill that would criminalize women seeking the procedure. It would make any abortion in the state a murder that includes pregnancies that are ended with the abortion pill. There would be exceptions for spontaneous miscarriages and life-saving procedures to save the mother, but there are no exceptions for either rape or incest. Olympic champion gymnast Gabby Douglas is returning to competition for the first time in nearly 8 years. The African-American gymnast said Tuesday she'll be competing later this month at the Winter Cup in Louisville, Kentucky. It's the first step on the road to qualifying for the 2024 Paris Olympics. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network and BINnews.com.
Some people just know the best rate for you is a rate based on you with Allstate, not one based on anyone else. So if you drive safely, you could save money. Good to know. Visit allstate.com or call for a quote today.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Clippers will go into tonight's home game against New Orleans with the best record in the Western Conference. At 34-15, the Clippers are a half game ahead of Oklahoma City, Minnesota, and Denver. OKC and Minnesota lost last night to move the Clippers into the top spot in the West. The Clippers are coming off a 6-1 road trip. They are 15-3 since January 1st and 19 games over 500 for the first time since April 11, 2021. Tip-off time tonight is 7 p.m. on ESPN. The Lakers are off until Thursday night against Denver at Crypto.com. Top 5 women's college basketball teams in this week's AP poll: South Carolina, Iowa, North Carolina State, Colorado, and Ohio State. UCLA is 9th, USC 10th. Top 5 men's teams: UConn, Purdue, North Carolina, Kansas, and Houston. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Race, culture wars, political turf battles, criminal justice, and injustice. The courts. These are the conversations you won't hear elsewhere. My guests are leading journalists, celebrities, and sports figures, elected leaders, and influencers. They aren't afraid to get into it and say the quiet part out loud. With Ariva Martin in real time, your commute just became the most engaging part of your day. Tune in weekdays from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. or find us on YouTube. Ariva Martin in real time, when you want it straight, no chaser.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
My mom has taken up going to the park to practice yoga.
My dad's going to a club, but not a book club, a salsa club.
Finding new hobbies comes with age.
My mom has started getting lost and not knowing where she's going.
Becoming lost or disoriented doesn't. Confusion with time or place may be a sign of Alzheimer's. An early diagnosis can help improve the quality of life for your loved one. Learn the warning signs of Alzheimer's at 10signs.org. Brought to you by the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
Helping to broaden your political and moral imagination with our 2024 Climate Justice Campaign. We're KBLA Talk 1580.
If you like using debit over credit, shouldn't you also get rewarded? Well, now you can with Discover Cashback Debit. It's a checking account that rewards everyone with cash back on everyday purchases with no fees, period. Check out eligibility and terms at discover.com/cashbackdebit. Discover Bank, member FDIC.
We all agree that America has a very serious problem.
Okay, KBLA delegation, we need your help as we launch our 2024 Climate Justice Campaign. We would deeply appreciate you going to our KBLA 1580 website and filling out a short climate justice survey, which will help us better serve our beloved community as we build out this campaign. It'll take you just a few short minutes to complete the online survey, and the information you provide us will be invaluable as we do our part to hold folk accountable and amplify the voices of our people in this climate conversation. When you take the survey, you'll be automatically entered to win seats at our annual Black History Month luncheon, Thursday, February 29th. So, hit our website at KBLA 1580. Help us out by taking the short Climate Justice Campaign survey, and you could be our guest at our annual Black History Month luncheon, Thursday, February 29th. Thank you in advance for your consideration and cooperation. At KBLA Talk 1580, we care about the community, we care about the climate.
Substance use disorder and addiction is so isolating. And so as a Black woman In recovery, hope must be loud. It grows louder when you ask for help and you're vulnerable. It is the thread that lets you know that no matter what happens, you will be okay.
When we learn the power of hope, recovery is possible. Find out how at startwithhope.com. Brought to you by the National Council for Mental Wellbeing, Shatterproof, and the Ad Council.
Let's get back to more of Tavis Smiley right now.
A conversation right now with Georgetown law professor Cliff Sloan. In this hour, we'll talk about his new book, which takes a historic look at the High Court. It's called The Court at War. The Court at War, which seems apt right about now. A court at war, as you no doubt already know. The court will hear oral arguments tomorrow about whether states like Colorado, Maine, and others can keep Donald Trump off the ballot this year. And after yesterday's appellate court ruling, which we discussed on this program, that Donald Trump does not have immunity from prosecution for his role in the January 6th insurrection, the court may very well take up that case as well on a Trump appeal. So all kinds of SCOTUS stuff to talk about in this hour, a timely conversation with Georgetown law professor Cliff Sloan right now. Professor Sloan, good to have you on. How are you, sir?
I'm great, and thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
It is my great delight to have you on. Your book is called The Court at War, FDR, His Justices, and the World They Made. We'll talk about that as we move through the next 90 minutes here. But let me start with this. The news of the day, as you heard me mention a moment ago, actually the news of yesterday and the news of tomorrow, to be exact. Let's start with yesterday, Tuesday, and we'll go to Thursday, tomorrow, in a moment. Your thoughts broadly about what we saw yesterday, that Trump does not have immunity from January 6th prosecution, and I will jump from there, sir.
Absolutely. So I think that's really a victory for the rule of law. The arguments that former President Trump was making that he has absolute immunity is something that would be really shocking for our system of government, where it's a basic principle, and as the court said in its opinion, no man is above the law, no person is above the law. We had a revolution to get away from a king who was above the law, and the basic principle of our government is that everybody is subject to the law, and he was seeking to carve out this sort of special and absolute immunity. And the court's opinion, it's a terrific opinion, and it's very thorough, it's very persuasive. The judges were unanimous. There was one that was appointed by the first President Bush, the other two appointed by President Biden, and they were completely in agreement on everything, and it really just kind of it took on and knocked down every argument that he put up there. And one of the points that they emphasized, which is really very important also, is that in his impeachment trial, in his second impeachment trial in the Senate, after he had left office, his lawyers explicitly argued as one of the major reasons against convicting him, look, he's a former president. He can now be criminally prosecuted. And there were some senators who voted for acquittal on that basis. And now they're trying to say when it was time for the criminal prosecution, he can't be prosecuted unless he was first convicted in the impeachment trial. So it was just completely inconsistent, and the court really called them out on it. And the one other point I just want to make is about timing and where we go from here, because there was some concern that it seemed to be taking the court a while, even though in the ordinary case, this wouldn't be a very long period of time at all, 4 weeks from the time it was argued. But, of course, timing is so important here in terms of the question of whether there's going to be a trial before the election, so people know whether one of the almost certain candidates for one of the major parties has been convicted of these federal crimes, and it seemed to be taking a while. But one thing that they did is they put it now on a very, very fast timeline where he has to go to the Supreme Court by Monday, and if he doesn't, then it's a green light for the trial to start. And so the real question now is going to be what the Supreme Court does with it and how quickly the Supreme Court moves. So that's the big question about whether we're going to get a trial fairly soon. Under one scenario, in one way or another, the Supreme Court could move very quickly, and we could see this go into trial anywhere April, May, June. Under another scenario, the Supreme Court could take its time, and it would absolutely get pushed past the election. So that's the big question right now.
So that big question raises a few other questions for me. Let me start down that path. Number one, there is no pressure on the U.S. Supreme Court to move. They move at their own pace. And when you consider that 3 of those justices were appointed by one Donald Trump, there's no gun to their head to move swiftly, is there?
No, there's not they don't have to move swiftly. You're absolutely right. It's a discretionary determination by them. At the same time, I do think they are aware of the kind of public controversy both about former President Trump and about the Supreme Court's legitimacy. And there are some justices, and Chief Justice Roberts does seem to be concerned about that. And I think there would be some concern on the part of some of the justices if it looked like they were just delaying and sort of putting it off. Now, how much of a factor that'll be, we will see. But one other point that's interesting about timing, and I know we're going to get to tomorrow's argument, but, some people have felt that actually a number of the justices would like to have both cases in front of them because they would be likely to rule against Trump on this immunity question and likely to rule for him on the Colorado disqualification question. And so they would be sort of projecting even-handedness. And with the Colorado case, they did move very, very fast on that. Now, of course, there was a decision that had him knocked off the ballot, and you've got the primaries in the election coming up, so they sort of had to move quickly on that. But that also might be something that will be that would lead them to move fairly quickly here, so that they can consider the two cases together.
The second question that your big question raises for me is the point you raised about he is having to go to the Supreme Court by Monday. Number one, there's no doubt in your mind, I'm speaking for you now, there's no doubt in my mind, there's no doubt in anybody's mind that he's going to meet that Monday deadline. He certainly is going to appeal this decision. The first question is, what are the politics, and I think you'll know what I'm asking here, what are the politics behind their forcing him to do it by Monday?
Well, the reason is because, ordinarily, if a court of appeals issued a decision like that, he would have a long time, 45 days to ask for them to rehear it or the full court. And then if one of the judges on that court, only one of them, wanted to write a dissent, then that could hold it up for a long time. And that's something that I was very concerned might happen. But what they did, they got way ahead of all that. They said, it doesn't matter if you ask us for rehearing. If you haven't gone to the Supreme Court by Monday, the technical legal term is issuing the mandate. We're going to issue our mandate. This takes effect, and the trial can go forward. And getting to your question about, the politics and what's at stake, what is at stake is whether he's going to be tried in the near future and how important that question is. And, you said he's certainly going to appeal to the Supreme Court, and he definitely will. But it's not just because he thinks he's right on the merits. He's doing everything he can to delay. Of course. Because his view is he's going to get in there. He thinks he's going to win the election, and he'll pull the plug on the prosecution. So he's just trying to get past the election. And
no, you're doing fine. I'm sorry for cutting in. Let me just tell you what I want to ask, and I'll ask it now, and you can respond to it when we come forward. Trump's effort, obviously, is to delay, as you just said. Everybody knows that. But in most of these cases, if I heard you correctly, Professor Sloan, he would have basically, typically 45 days or more to make this decision. My question is, why did they press him to do it by Monday, and are there politics behind that decision? I'm not defending Donald Trump. God knows I'm not. He don't need my help, and I wouldn't offer it to him anyway. If Donald Trump were on fire, well, I'm not going to say that. But he doesn't need my help. My point is that if they typically have 45 days, any other person would have 45 days to respond. Why did they force him? Why are they rushing him to do it by Monday, and are there politics behind that? I got other stuff to ask you. He's got more answers. You're listening to Cliff Sloan, professor at Georgetown, right now on Tavis Smiley.
From Lamert Park with love, this is Tavis Smiley.
What is dedication?
My biggest fear in the middle of my addiction was that my kids wouldn't have a father. And I started thinking, you know what? This isn't my story. I definitely had to become a better man to be a better father. It's important to me that my kids are empowered and truly believe that if they can think it, they can do it.
That's dedication. Visit fatherhood.gov to hear more. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Joey from Vermont, a farmer trying to get through the winter. Adriana from South Carolina, a single mother living paycheck to paycheck. Liam from Ohio, an injured father struggling to provide for his family. Hi, I'm Shanola Hampton, and I support the Feeding America network of food banks because they help provide over 6 billion meals to people in need each year. Learn more at feedingamerica.org.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we do Black history every single day. In fact, as the only Black talk radio station west of the Mississippi, we are Black history. Our annual Black History Month luncheon is fast approaching, and we want to be sure to give you ample time to get your company, organization, church, or group to join us at this year's celebration on the last day of the month, Thursday, February 29th at noon. Last year, we honored iconic local Black media personalities, including Pat Harvey, Jim Hill, Mark Brown, Beverly White, Sandy Banks, and Pat Prescott, and raised $20,000 in scholarships. This year, we're honoring Black Hollywood creatives who have used their artistic genius as climate justice champions. At this year's luncheon, we will be showcasing and sharing their inspiring work on our big screen. Plus, a scrumptious meal, live music, great company, and lots of fun with your favorite KBLA Talk 1580 hosts. So contact us today at info@smileyaudio.media.com or call 323-290-4690. That's info@smileyaudio.media.com or call 323-290-4690. We hope to see you Thursday, February 29th as we close out Black History Month. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your Black.
Hello, I'm John McKinney, your candidate for District Attorney. As an African American who has served our community for over 25 years, I'm proud to have successfully convicted the killer of Nipsey Hussle, standing up for justice where it matters most. But my commitment extends beyond the courtroom. I'm deeply invested in youth development. And when it comes to our police, I believe in accountability. It is essential that those who protect us are also responsible to us, reflecting the values and integrity of our community. This election, I ask for your vote. I am John McKinney, and I'm running to be your district attorney. Learn more at McKinneyforLA.com.
Paid for by John McKinney for LA District Attorney 2024.
He's rooting for everybody black. Everybody black. More of Tavis Smiley coming your way right now.
More of Georgetown law professor Cliff Sloan coming your way right about now. His book is called The Court at War, which I said earlier seems apt, an apt description of the court right about now. We'll get to that book and its history, his history that he unveils about the court later in our dialogue. I'm glad I've got him for the rest of this hour and all of next hour. A lot to talk about, and I wanted more time with him because of this breaking news about SCOTUS, the Supreme Court of the United States, and these two cases that they are likely to hear. One we know they're going to hear, the other they may hear. We'll come to that issue in just a second here. But back to my question, Professor Sloan, about if typically, if I understood you correctly, typically a guy who's not Donald Trump would have like 45 days to respond to this. But why, and are there politics behind why they forced him to do it by Monday? That's my question.
Yes, and I wouldn't say politics. And
come on, you know the court's political. Come on, you know the court's political.
But I would say it's very sound judicial administration.
Okay.
Because
I like that phrase. I'll go with that. We'll go with that. Go ahead.
But because they know this is a very important, very high stakes trial, and very important for people to know if this person is going to be convicted. And so it is an extraordinary case. It's not some ordinary case. Timing does matter. It's a little bit like when you think about the Richard Nixon tapes case in the Supreme Court that ultimately, after the Supreme Court decision, he resigned within a week because they ruled against him. The Supreme Court moved very, very quickly then. Mm-hmm. They didn't treat it like, okay, we're going to put this on an ordinary timeline, because they knew the importance of deciding it quickly, and I think that was sound judicial administration to use. But and I think it's the same thing here, and that's why I think I resist the term politics, because I don't think it's like, oh, we want to help one candidate or help another, but they know how important it is. Okay. And I will say again, the spotlight is on the Supreme Court now, and if the Supreme Court does not move very quickly, it will be engaging in very poor judicial administration, because it will be leaving this very important issue out there unresolved. It'll be rewarding Trump's delay game. So I think it sets a very interesting precedent for the Supreme Court, because they're saying, look, we moved really quickly because we know how important this is for the public to know the outcome of this trial.
When we come forward, I want to ask Professor Sloan his thoughts about whether or not they will, in fact, take this case. I've said to you many times on this program, and you know this well, that for better or for worse, the Supreme Court chooses the cases it wants to hear. Now, that is political. With all due respect to Professor Sloan, it's political. We know it's political. They choose the cases that they want to hear. So we're talking about this case as if they're going to take it. Now, he has until Monday to appeal, to go to the Supreme Court, but there's no rule, there's no law that says they have to take this case. I suspect they will, but I've been reading other stuff today, that other scholars who say they may not take the case. They may let it stand as is. So is the Supreme Court going to take this case about whether or not Donald Trump has immunity? We know they're taking the case tomorrow. They're already scheduled to hear oral arguments on whether or not he can be kicked off the ballots in certain states. We know they're going to hear that case. But on this immunity case, will they take it? They don't have to. Let's talk about that when we come forward with Professor Cliff Sloan of Georgetown Law on Tavis Smiley.
Unapologetically progressive. Unapologetically black. You're tapped into Tavis Smiley.
If you're like me, 60 and retired, making ends meet, especially here at the supermarket and drugstore, is tough. I'm so blessed to have found benefitscheckup.org. It's a free and confidential website from the National Council on Aging that connected me to $1,200 a year in programs that help pay for food, medicine, utilities, and more. Maybe it can help you. benefitscheckup.org.
My daughter was diagnosed with a rare malignant rhabdoid tumor on the spine. They sent her straight to St. Jude. My hope was gone. But when you get there, everyone's like, hey, we're not going to give up. And when you see other people not giving up on your child, that makes all the difference in the world. When I found out I didn't have to pay, I was just grateful. They saved my baby's life.
Finding cures, saving children. Learn more at stjude.org.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 believes in community empowerment. LA's 99 neighborhood councils form the grassroots level of the Los Angeles city government. The system was created to connect LA's diverse communities to City Hall. While neighborhood council board members are volunteers, they are also public officials elected to office by the members of their community. Neighborhood councils advocate on issues like homelessness, housing, land use, emergency preparedness, public safety, parks, transportation, and sustainability. They also provide local expertise on the delivery of city services to their various communities. Neighborhood councils are open to participation by anyone who is a part of the fabric of daily life in said community. This includes those who live, work, or own property or a business. If you are interested in stepping up to join your local neighborhood council, visit www.empowerla.org. That's empowerla.org. It's time to think globally, but act locally. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Watch out! You got me! The galaxy is safe once again.
In the pretend universe, kids play with pretend guns. In the real world, it's up to us to make sure they don't get their hands on a real gun. If you have a gun in the house, keep it locked, unloaded, and stored separately from ammunition. Safe gun storage saves lives. Learn how to make your home safer at endfamilyfire.org. That's endfamilyfire.org. Brought to you by End Family Fire, Brady, and the Ad Council.
Meet Cheryl. Hey. She's on vacation and lost in the moment. Unfortunately, so is her Chase debit card.
It's gotta be somewhere.
Maybe she lost it at salsa night.
These skirts should have pockets.
Or maybe she lost it at Pilates.
3 and 2 and...
But she's not worried. With the Chase mobile app, she can lock her card till it turns up. Tools that help protect. One bank that puts you in control. Visit chase.com/checking. Chase, make more of what's yours.
Chase mobile app is available for select mobile devices. Message and data rates may apply. JP Morgan Chase Bank, N.A. member FDIC.
More honesty than you can handle. More empowerment than you can imagine. You're tuned in to Tavis Smiley.
All right, Professor Sloan, I'm glad we got a full hour in front of us because I got many more questions for you, and we ain't got into your book yet, The Court at War. In the 4 minutes I have left, let's cover two things right quick. As I said a moment ago, and you're the professor here, not me, the High Court doesn't have to take this case, even though the appellate court said you got to get to them by Monday. They could not take this case, yes or no?
Correct.
Okay.
They could decide not to. Now, I will tell you, I think they will, but I think there's an outside chance they won't because of the opinion that was issued yesterday. The reason I think they will is that this is a big, important issue of the type that the Supreme Court thinks it should decide. We've never had a former president be criminally prosecuted before. This whole question of whether there is immunity for a former president has never been decided by the Supreme Court. So I think there's going to be a strong feeling on the part of a number of justices that they should be the ones deciding it. But I will say that the opinion yesterday is so outstanding, and it's written, and it's unanimous. It includes judges across the political spectrum, and it does such a thorough job that I now think there's an outside chance that the court won't take it. I mean, I think it's maybe a 10% chance. But if you had asked me before the opinion, I would have said barely above zero chance. And I actually do think there is a real chance now that the court will sort of let it go. But as I say, I think the most likely outcome is that they are going to take it, and then the question is going to be how quickly they decide it.
All right, 90 seconds for this. We'll continue when we come forward into the next hour. But given that there are Republican and Democratic appointed judges who sounded off on this already, do you think that portends any particular outcome if they do take the case for how the Republican appointees on the Supreme Court will vote?
Well, I think, they haven't spoken to this exact issue, but, it's interesting. A couple of years ago when there were issues about subpoenas to President Trump, and 7 of the 9 justices, including the Trump appointees, rejected Trump's position. Now, they didn't go all the way on the other side, but they were, 7-2 opinions. And so I think that the Supreme Court is going to overwhelmingly reject his claims of absolute immunity. And so I think his case on the merits is a loser in the Supreme Court. They're going to resoundingly reject it.
I've got
the question is when they do that. That's the important question.
Got it. We'll come back to the when part, when they do it, if they take the case, when they do it. We'll come back to that in the next hour. And the other thing I want to get to, I got a smart audience, and I'm getting a bunch of smart questions from these smart listeners. And one of them is, and I get this question, so when we come forward, we'll start with this. Why do the judges appointed by Trump not have to recuse themselves from both of these cases? The case about immunity, should they take it, and the case they're going to hear oral arguments in tomorrow about whether he should be kicked off the ballots. Why do the 3 judges that he appointed not have to recuse themselves from these 2 cases? That and a great deal more for Georgetown law professor Cliff Sloan when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
Women seeking the procedure. It would make any abortion in the state a murder. That includes pregnancies that are ended with